So something I had mentioned on Discord that I wanted to do was make a video about snipers and talking about everything that I had learned about snipers and about kind of fixing or optimizing the setup that I had to kind of make snipers really freaking powerful. So to go back kind of when I started my stats journey with SGL, I was very focused on DPS. So I had assumed that if you pick the weapon with the highest DPS, then you will kill enemies the fastest with that, and it's just not necessarily the case. DPS is a great statistic to talk about a weapon's power in general over kind of a large variety of targets, but time to kill is a much more accurate measure for figuring out how much time it takes to actually kill your target. Even if you look at something like the AT Vosa machine gun, which starts off at over 2000 DPS, when you look at a sniper rifle, you have the potential to kill many targets in one hit. So there's not even any time for DPS to be relevant because it's an instant kill. So you've effectively got a time to kill of 0. Where machine guns start to overtake snipers is when you need to fire off more than 2 shots with a sniper to kill something, and when there are a lot of enemies packed together, which, MGs are very effective at mowing through those packs with ease because of the DPS and the magazine size. But with any kind of burst weapon, and a sniper is a burst damage weapon. So shotguns are burst damage weapons, burst rifles are burst damage weapons, obviously. But the only way you're going to be faster at killing your targets over a weapon with high DPS is by killing that target in very few shots. So ideally, 1 or 2 bursts or blasts or rounds or whatever you want to call it. Another point I want to make is that so often when it comes to playing this game, people focus on seeing the biggest number possible on the screen, and that's a decent strategy on maximizing the damage that you do, but it's not always about hitting the enemy as hard as you can with a single shot. With snipers, it's about doing just enough damage to kill them in 1 or 2 shots. And when you look at it that way, then what you want to do is maximize your fire rate so that you can kill them very quickly if it takes 2 shots, or you can move to the next target very quickly. So the best example of this is if you take Meltdown versus Cryonic Scream. So Meltdown has about 200 more base damage than Cryonic, but it fires 10 rounds a minute slower, and it's ridiculously slow. So if you just take a PvP scenario where you're trying to kill an enemy in just body shots, the Meltdown will do more damage on that first hit, but they both need just 2 hits to kill the target. So the Cryonic is going to be much faster at firing the second shot. So if you've got 2 players with decent aim and they're both firing at each other, one with Meltdown, one with Cryonic, the Cryonic is almost always going to win because of the faster fire rate. This is partially why you see Cryonic used a lot more in PvP than Meltdown, apart from the fact that Meltdown has ridiculously awful accuracy. But all this is to say that when you pick a sniper, you want to look at the number of rounds or number of hits that it takes to kill your target and minimize that first. So you want to get that down to ideally 1, if not 2. But then once you have that kind of list of the snipers that can do that, then your next decision is I want to maximize the fire rate with whatever snipers fit that mold. So not only will your follow-up shots be faster, um, but again, you can move to another target and fire off that shot so you can kill multiple enemies a lot faster because your sniper is kind of ready to fire sooner. So where snipers perform slower than machine guns is when your target takes more than 2 shots to kill. So I'm talking about Regis, Blade Dancer, and then kind of those high health versions of Hellstorms and Red Hammers and Red Blades, Razor Blades that that you see in Gold. This is where DPS starts to come into play with sniper rifles because these targets' health pools are very high. There's still plenty of justification for using a sniper over a machine gun because of the range and how much health you can take off at any point in time. Plus, snipers are really effective against Regis, both in Voltaic Fist and Arena, um, because you can just kind of shoot at him from wherever you are. Uh, and the other thing too is that against Blade Dancer, if somebody else is pulling him, you can just lay into his back and chunk off just a ton of his health at a time. But let's get into kind of what snipers to choose. Um, Most people love to say, "Oh, this is the best sniper in the game because of blah 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 blah." I don't like to make those statements. There's an optimal sniper for whatever mode you're playing based on your gear and whatever skill build you're using. So you always should be looking at what your targets are going to be to determine which sniper is best for that. Um, so arena bronze, for instance, you don't need a sniper with very high damage for that because the vast majority of the enemies there are trash. It's a lot of dreads, grunts, yellow camo grunts, blades. There's some chargers in there, some twin blades, but not very many. So you should pick something with kind of, or you can make the sacrifice on base damage of the sniper to pick something with a higher fire rate, um, that also carries a lot more rounds in it so that you can use it a lot more. Um, and the Turbo Gauss is the perfect sniper for Arena Bronze. So like when I set my speedrun record for bronze, we were using two people were using Turbo Gauss and one person was using Revenant because Turbo Gauss just kills all the enemies in like 1 to 2 shots from any range. It carries 48 rounds in total when you don't have anything helping that out. But when I use a build that has at least 2 points in combat, I have 52% support ammo, midnight pants. So I can max out my Turbo Gauss at 82 rounds. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous number of rounds. I don't have to use any other weapon, my primary or my pistol. I don't use it in bronze ever because I have enough rounds in my turbo to kill everything. Um, Now, when it comes to silver, you want a little bit stronger of a sniper because you've got quite a lot of elites that spawn there. A lot of the defilers are there, so chargers, twin blades, crushers. So you need something that can kill them in 1 or 2 headshots, 1 or 2 backshots, and then with supercharged backshots, ideally you're looking at you want to minimize that to just one supercharged backshot. But the other enemies that are kind of frustrating in silver are the decimator grunts. Um, but if you pick the right sniper, you can even kill them in one body shot, and that's where snipers get really fun. Um, when it comes to Arena Gold, it's you kind of want the same sniper as Silver in some cases, but you definitely need something that's strong against elites because they're everywhere. Um, but yeah, a lot of the snipers that are going to be strong in Silver are very strong in Gold too. Um, Hive Mind and Blade Dancer, I never snipe in Hive because you can't really crit a lot of the time, is like against the boss or anything like that. So yeah, you can pull off some crit shots here and there on the Hellstorms and the Chargers and the different enemies that you do have to fight. But when it comes to the boss fight, it's so slow with a sniper that I never use it. And Blade Dancer, you're freaking running around that dungeon so much, um, and especially when it gets to the boss fight too. Um, you can easily take down Blade in like 5 seconds with 3 machine guns, and so it's just I only snipe when it's kind of advantageous to do so, when I can actually run faster. I mean, I do snipe for fun too, but my main thing is I'm looking for the fastest way to clear enemies so that I can do faster runs, farm faster, and feel more powerful. It's just more fun. Um, Voltaic Fist, Cryonic, and Lacroix are the best here, um, because like you need something with high damage for sure, but you also need that balanced with good fire rate, um, because you want to be able to fire off ideally at least two shots into Regis's back before he turns around. You could use like Black Ice or Meltdown or True Patriot, um, but I find so often, especially in like random squads, that um, I can only really get one off on his back. If somebody's not doing a good job at distracting Regis, I can only get one off with True Patriot or Meltdown or Black Ice before he turns around. So you end up doing more damage with Lacroix and Cryonic. Brothers of Fire, it's kind of, the dungeon's so easy that you can really use anything that you want. Um, I kind of look at that as just the opportunity to have fun. And so um, I've messed around with OG Moneymaker in Brothers of Fire a lot, and that can be really fun just because I really like that gun, and I just don't get to use it a lot. So it's really fun there, but it's just so easy. It's not really worth strategizing which is the best sniper for Brothers of Fire. But now, like onto PvP, you got duels, and here you definitely need a sniper that will take the enemy down in two body shots or one headshot. Um, and so you want to have a high fire rate on that too, like the Meltdown versus Cryonic example that I was talking about before, so you can get that second body shot off if you missed a head. Twilight Vindicator is my sniper for duels, like for sure. Um, you have to have at least 9% damage on it to really make it work. Because against somebody, most people in PvP are running that 12 agility, 8 survival build with the bar buff for 15% extra projectile resist. So if you've got 9% damage on your Twilight, then you can two body shot somebody that has a 42 health chest or worse. If they have a 43 health chest, then you would need a 10% damage Twilight, and if they've got better than that, you're a little bit out of luck. But the two body shot kill is really, really fast with Twilight in duels. And the one good thing too is that if you've got a good opponent, you might be able to tap them once with Twilight, and they'll be firing at you with their primary. And there are certainly plenty of times where they'll trigger your fight for your life, which you should have in a PvP build. And when that happens, then that second shot with Twilight is definitely going to be strong enough. Um, so that's kind of why I say Twilight is just, it's amazing in duels. Cryonic and Lacroix are the other two good options. Lacroix is kind of my second favorite, because of the ability to one shot to the body when you turn Supercharger on. Cryonic can also do that, but some enemies, they have strong enough chest pieces to defend against this if it's like a hipfire supercharged shot, and you don't have kind of extra damage for your sniper on your gloves. So I've just kind of gotten away from using Cryonic in PvP. It's just that little bit of safety that's there with Twilight and with Lacroix that I just like better. For team PvP, I still I still like Lacroix better than Twilight here. Um, and for the Lacroix that I use in team PvP, I have the mag cap on it, so it does give me that one extra round. But what's really important there, I've been in CTF plenty of times where this happened, where you kind of run up and the team is kind of packed together. You can throw supercharge on, and it's one shot, one shot, one shot. Your aim has to be good, but at least Lacroix gives you that option, whereas with Twilight, you're kind of out of luck, even if you have supercharger on. Cryonic, you'll also see a lot in team PvP. It works fine. It works well. But if people have 42 health chests or better, your supercharged shots won't land. So you kind of have to rely on your team to, burn them down a little bit more, or you got to, get the headshots. Um, some people use black ice for team PvP. I don't see it a whole lot anymore um, because they like that to hit the body once and then switch their primary or something else, and so you're kind of using a different strategy of just maximizing that body shot damage in one shot, and then relying on your team or your primary to kind of finish them off easily. That's fine, but I really don't like the fire rate of black ice. It's really hard to get used to, and the accuracy is really weird. You just have to aim in just kind of a weird place with black ice. I've never gotten used to it. But this kind of brings up a point that I was getting to earlier, that the damage that you need is what is really important, not necessarily maximizing the damage that you can do. Um, so my PvP Lacroix has no crit perk on that gun, but it's okay because the base damage is so high, and I have enough crit on my armor to where a crit perk isn't even necessary. I mean, with my current setup, my Lacroix will do 220 damage to the head just with a hipfire headshot, which is way more than any health that any enemy could ever have in PvP. Like, I think it's like 173 is something like the maximum. So yeah, 220 is plenty. So just harping on the point that snipers are just kind of this math puzzle where you're not looking for the sniper that necessarily hits for the highest number with each round, which is meltdown, but instead you're looking for the one that hits just hard enough that also has as high fire rate as possible. So now let's talk about which snipers to use with which build. Since we already talked about PvP snipers a good bit, let's focus on PvE. So the skills that impact sniper damage are in the agility and combat trees. So in the agility tree, you have fight for your life, and you have the crit damage skill, which is at 12 points. The skills that impact sniper damage in the combat tree are elite damage, which is 25% elite damage. That's at 8 points in combat. Lord of War, that's 25% secondary damage. That's at 11 points in combat. And Kill Shot, which is the 15% iron sight damage at 12 points in combat. If you're using a build that doesn't have any combat in it, so if you're using that 12 agility, 8 survival PvP build, your sniper damage needs to be very high to compensate for the fact that only your crit values are going to be boosted with that tree, unless you have fight for your life on too. But it really kind of comes down to black ice. Black ice is really just going to be the best kind of sniper for hitting the right damage thresholds and one-shotting a lot of different enemies. Lacroix and Cryonic can be decent, but you'll burn through a lot of ammo because your first shot will get most of the way there, and then you'll likely have a ton of like wasted just over damage with that second shot. So the effectiveness of these snipers at using ammo efficiently goes way down. Um, you could just say screw it if you don't want to use black ice because it's too slow, and just go with Turbo Gauss instead because it carries so many rounds. So that's totally fine. But yeah, really, black ice, Turbo Gauss. If you're using no combat, those are really the snipers you go to. When you get up to 8 points in combat, this is where your sniper choices, more of them start to become available. So black ice is strong enough to be good with any build, but since we already talked about, you want to be looking for maximizing fire rate too. Lacroix, Cryonic, and Twilight start to become like really viable. So it will very much depend on how good your sniper gloves are and how good your sniper perks are to determine which sniper is best for whatever you're running. But when you get to the top level of gear, Lacroix and Twilight just pull away from the pack. What I'll suggest is that when you're trying out snipers, start with kind of the highest damage option first, and then work your way down to see how it goes. So start with black ice, then go to Lacroix, then Cryonic, then Twilight. And then kind of once you start noticing, oh, I can't really one or two shot things anymore. Like once I went to that next sniper down in damage, then you just go to the one that you previously used. So the other interesting thing with the 8-point combat builds is that you've got to be selective about what buff you use. So with snipers, you should always be using the crit buff, like absolutely 100%. Snipers are all about crit, so you have to maximize that damage. But then you've got to make the choice between elite or just base damage. So most often in like silver and gold, people take the elite buff because all the elites are stronger, and so you want to kill them faster, and that's a great choice. Um, but snipers like Lacroix and Cryonic actually benefit more from the damage buff than the elite buff. I'm just talking with these 8-point combat builds. Um, this is because even though the damage on the elite enemies will be lower when you go with base damage instead of elite damage, it should still reach the thresholds you need to kill those enemies in the same number of shots as if you had the elite damage buff. So, on a crusher, for instance, you need 8,500 damage to kill a crusher. With my Lacroix, I can get about 85, 8,600 with my Lacroix with the damage buff, and like 87, 8,800. I can't remember the exact number if I use the elite buff. Well, sure, it's great to see a higher number, but they both kill them in the same number of shots. It's just one shot, and then when you when you take the damage buff instead of the elite buff, Lacroix and Cryonic can get to this point where they can one-shot Decimator grunts, and that's a big threshold to cross. It's a big difference when you can do that. The other enemy that shows up in silver that's actually pretty strong are Decimator blades. They only show up once in wave 2, so it's not like a huge deal to like build your sniper around just being able to kill Decimator blades. But they've got 20% resistance, and they've got massive amounts of HP. It's 3,350, something like that. So you need like a really strong sniper and really strong headshot damage to be able to kill them. So even though Twilight is like my favorite with a build like this, um, it can't kind of one shot the Decimator blades to the head, and it can't one shot Decimator grunts to the body unless I have Fight for Your Life activated. So when Fight for Your Life is activated, you get that 30% damage boost, and then that's enough to kind of reach those thresholds. So it's kind of why I like running Twilight, because I love using Fight for Your Life damage. So I'll purposefully kind of take damage so that I activate Fight for Your Life, and then I go hunting for kind of Decimator grunts and Decimator blades and stuff like that. But this is also the reason, um, why when I use Twilight, I only use the elite buff with Twilight, because the damage buff doesn't help it at all. Like even if I use the damage buff with Twilight, it's not going to get where it needs to be to kill those enemies in one shot. So I just go for, okay, let me do more damage against the elites, and then I'll focus on the non-elites, the Decimator grunts and stuff, when I have Fight for Your Life activated. So those are pretty interesting builds. The 8-point combat builds you really got to balance them. They take very good perks on your armor and your sniper rifle to pull them off, and to pull them off well. But when you get to that level where you can do it, it's my favorite. Next, once you get to like 11 points in combat, Twilight, Lacroix, and Cryonic become really strong, and they just shred through pretty much anything. Twilight is my absolute favorite here because it has the fastest fire rate and carries the most rounds too. So you you can kill enemies in the same number of shots as if you were using Lacroix or Cryonic, but you get more ammo, you get faster fire rate, and it's just awesome. I use 9 agility, 11 combat a lot with Twilight, and it fixes that problem of one-shotting the Decimator blades to the head, one-shotting the Decimator grunts to the body. And I love Lacroix, but it very much suffers from an ammo capacity problem. So you have to mix in some primary and pistol usage when you use Lacroix, because you kind of need to manage the ammo pretty closely. When you get to 12 points in combat, though, that's where the clouds part, and you have an incredible amount of freedom of sniper choice because of that 15% iron sight damage. So based on doing a bunch of math, what I found is that you can certainly use any of the snipers I previously talked about, but a few additional ones become highly viable that have even higher fire rates. So these snipers include Purcell, OG Moneymaker, and Hawksmoor Neo. Um, my favorite of these to play is the OG Moneymaker, but the Hawksmoor Neo actually hits a lot of the right damage thresholds more easily. Um, so if you're going to use OG, you pretty much need a god roll, like a 10 damage, 5 iron sight, 15 crit. Like it needs really, really high values on the perks, and good sniper gloves, to make it work almost exactly like the other snipers. Whereas with Hawksmoor, it's slightly more forgiving because it carries higher damage, per shot, even if the accuracy just feels a little bit weird. Once you start dipping below 900, in base damage for snipers, that's when you're just never going to reach the right damage thresholds to one-shot kill, a wide variety of enemies. Like even if you had, I'm talking 11% sniper damage gloves, 10 elite damage, max crit everywhere, you're not going to get there. Um, and if a sniper can't pull off a lot of those one shots, then you're just going to go to, let me just maximize the fire rate. So you're just going to go to Turbo Gauss. Even if there are more accurate snipers, with fast fire rates, kind of between Turbo Gauss and OG Moneymaker, um, like Meitoku, Shoke, they do a little bit more damage per shot than the Turbo Gauss, but their fire rate is so much lower. So you're still looking at kind of those two-shot kills. So you would instantly go to Turbo Gauss because it kills them faster. You carry more rounds. There's no competing with Turbo Gauss once you start getting into that category of snipers. Um, some other snipers that I didn't mention are Irie Special, Vespertine, and Vampire's Kiss. So these three snipers are basically inferior epic versions of Cryonic, Twilight, and Lacroix, respectively. So Irie Special is very similar to Cryonic, Vespertine to Twilight, Vampire's Kiss to Lacroix. Besson's Killer can also be used, but the accuracy of that gun is just weird. It's kind of like Hawksmoor sometimes. I just don't feel like I hit things very often sometimes. Um, and it's inferior to Cryonic too. It's got the same fire rate as Cryonic, but lower damage. So I never use Bessons. If you want to use any of those snipers, you can, but they need really, really good perks. So I'm talking damage, fire rate, crit, and elite. Or, you know, since Vampire's Kiss has the two static perks, if you get a damage, high damage, and elite, um, perks for your Vampire's Kiss, you can use that, but you still have a fire rate problem because it'll be stuck at 50, which just feels too slow. And kind of looking at it, kind of the damage fire rate Vampire's Kiss, um, it'll work if you go to like 11 points in combat, but it doesn't really work, with the 8-point combat builds. So that's why I just don't really like Vampire's Kiss. Lacroix is just way easier to use. Um, so to summarize all this, I'll just say a few things. If it isn't already apparent, the optimal sniper rifle is heavily dependent on what role you're playing, or what mode you're playing. So kind of what health level your targets are at, um, and on the perks of your sniper and on your gloves. So the spreadsheet that I posted to Discord, the official Discord, in the Knowledge Bank channel, should help you determine what your sniper setup should be if you enter in kind of all the perk values on your gear and your weapon. But if you don't want to do all that, just mess around with the high damage snipers and work your way down, like I was saying before. Um, so if you got to build with 0 points in combat, go with Black Ice. and you're not really going to do much better than that. 8 points in combat. Twilight is amazing when you pair it with Fight for Your Life, and Lacroix is freaking awesome if it's got the right perks and you're using the damage buff. Once you get to 11 points in combat, Twilight destroys the competition. Like Twilight above and beyond. If you go 9 agility, 11 combat, Twilight just crushes all the other snipers. Um, you can use plenty of other snipers too, but Twilight was tailor made for the 9 agility, 11 combat build. With 12 points in combat, hey, world is your oyster. You can choose from plenty of different snipers, but Turbo Gauss, Twilight, Lacroix, and Cryonic are really the winners there. Don't sleep on OG Moneymaker or Hawksmoor though. They can be very good, and they're a lot of fun to use. It's just a change of pace, so you're not stuck using the same guns. My final point that I'm going to give is a plug for my favorite build in the game. And many of you already know that's the 10 agility, 8 combat, 2 survival build. This has been my dream build ever since I started playing it a couple months ago for a few reasons. It's ridiculously fun to play duels with it because it makes my Black Dragon OP, and I can use Stunner and Blink, which is a lot of fun, even if it pisses people off. It's also really, really good in PvE, especially arenas, because I can use Fight for Your Life, and those elite damage skills really make a big impact. But ever since I kind of found this build, I've specifically farmed for the gear that gets my snipers to perform at the same level as, the stronger version of what this build is. So the pure PvE, no PvP version of the 10.8.2 build is 12 agility and 8 combat. So you get that extra crit damage, but my gear is so good that the time to kill is basically the same. So that 17% crit difference ends up just being a waste with snipers. It doesn't really make a difference in my gameplay. And having that 2 points in survival helps me to not die a lot, especially in PvP, but in PvE as well. And so I have more time to use Fight for Your Life too. The other builds I'll talk about: 9 agility, 11 combat. That's kind of a speed running, pure PvE build. You've got to try it out with Twilight Vindicator because it's ridiculous. It's so much fun. I use it in gold all the time, and it's become easy. I was running golds the other week, and when Fight for Your Life was on and I had Supercharger on, um, my back shots to Blade Dancer were like 15,250 with Twilight. And so because my teammates had aggro, I was just pop, 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 and just watching his health just chunk down. It was very satisfying. If you go with 12 points in combat, my favorite build there is 8 agility, 12 combat. But you can certainly use the 6 agility, 12 combat, 2 survival. But it'll just be a little slow without the extra run speed. It's not a huge deal in PvE. But yeah, I've gone on long enough. But I just wanted to put this out there to kind of wrap up the ridiculous amount of time that I've spent spreadsheeting and optimizing my build for using snipers to run things faster, especially Arena Silver, to run it faster than with a machine gun. So I hope you try it out, have fun with it. Don't hesitate to reach out to me on Discord if you have any questions or if you need help trying to figure out, what you need, what gear you need to make kind of your favorite sniper work. All right. Thanks.